Good. Now I'm going to.
I'm appropriately hidden too.
Yes, you're just off the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So am I, actually. Never mind.
Well, I always consider that a disadvantage, that the leader is off screen.
Yeah, but I know I've watched a lot of podcasts and the camera is on the speaker. Presumably, this is a class discussion. This is not a lecture from me. But anyway.
But you do talk a lot.
I do talk a lot. That's
Well, let me ask you the question.
I just spilled my coffee.
Here.
Thanks much.
Oh, that upset him. It was coffee.
Yeah, coffee's too important to spill it.
Want another cup? Should we fill it up for you?
No. Well, I'm gonna do that myself, but he's helping me with some more paper towels. Okay, today's class is the first of a series, or a new series rather. Flash your mind back 6 years to COVID. We were in March of 2020. We were working through the Gospel of Luke. In that old style, we just sat around the room here with our Bibles in our laps. That's how we did it. It was none of this stuff. And anyway, COVID hit, and I had recently learned how to do classes in Zoom. So we just kept going, but we shifted over to Zoom.
Right.
Zoom was our technology. And in that process, I had also become familiar with recording. So from the first day running this class through Zoom, I hit the record buttons. So that means that if you look at my archive of videos on the YouTube site, you find that they pick up with Luke chapter 10, because that's where we were in March of 2020. And I've been intending to go back and fix this problem. The problem I'm envisioning is that if somebody were to want to know what we did with the Gospel of Luke, what about chapters 1 through 10? They're not in the archive. So that's my purpose. I have laid out between now and Advent, the beginning of Advent. We'll do something else in Advent, but let's cover those 10 chapters of Luke so that my archive is complete. Now, we could decide to keep going. That's fine. We could redo the second half of Luke. I'm not averse to that. But in my mind, this little project will be done when we have reached that point. So that explains where we are. That's why we're suddenly going to be talking about Christmas. We're starting at the beginning of Luke, and Luke is one of the two Gospels. Luke and Matthew both have a Christmas story.
Are you recording?
Yes, I hit record. Yes. So that's where we're going. I'm gonna read through the text because this is a good text. It's a familiar text, I think, for everybody. But I'll come back to these summaries in just a second. Go ahead. Did you have something?
Well, I had a couple of notes to add whenever it's appropriate on Luke as a historian.
Yes, and I see. That's what I want to do, because
As a destroyer.
no, historian.
Historian.
No, not
I
destroyer.
will direct my comments to Louis,
Okay.
so he
Here's the thing.
catches up.
I also wanted to do that, Tim, but it's in the first paragraph that he says some interesting things that I thought would trigger that kind of introduction.
Gotcha.
So let's look at maybe not the whole chapter, first half of chapter 1. Let's just look at that first paragraph. This is Luke 1 through 4, and Is that big enough? Can you see that on the screen on the left? Tim?
It's on my
You've got,
tablet.
okay. Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Therefore, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, it seemed good also to me to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Okay, that is why Luke is writing this. Notice some things that are in there. He wants to draw up an orderly account. He says the word or. I was looking for, where does he say the word orderly? Orderly is in the third verse. He uses the term orderly. So I don't think he's saying that other accounts are not orderly, but his account, he is professing, is orderly. What did he have to look at? For example, possibly the Gospel of Mark is understood to be one of the early, well, it's the earliest gospel. So perhaps Luke had seen that. Luke was a companion to Paul. So he's been going around the Eastern Mediterranean with Paul, and I can imagine him seeing a number of people who were witnesses to various parts of the ministry of Jesus. And they were still alive. The fact that Luke is the book is normally dated a little bit after Mark and before John, so it's in the middle 60s, 70-ish. We don't know. That doesn't mean that Luke, while he was wandering around with Paul, didn't have his notebook out, and John.
So Paul's letters are older.
No, Paul's are earlier. Is that what you mean by older?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. The earliest writing in the New Testament is Paul. Yes. But
Before even the gospel.
Before the Gospel of Mark, right? So that's how I think it's kind of amazing to think about this. We're going to be looking at some stories, and it might come to your mind, where did Luke hear this story? For example, in the reading we're going to look at, we hear about Zechariah in the temple, and we hear about Mary being told by Gabriel she's going to have a baby without a husband. That story could have been from either Zechariah or Elizabeth talking to Luke, or somebody who knew the story from them. And the same with Mary. Mary could have talked to Luke and told him what we're going to read here, or if she passed the story on to somebody else, that person. We don't know. Luke doesn't say, I talked to Mary. He doesn't say that. So it could be either way. Go ahead.
Well, Luke was not a personal eyewitness of any of these accounts. Not the accounts, but the actual events.
We
he's
think
talking
he
about
was a
here.
second generation. Is that what you mean?
Right. Well, he was also the only Gentile
Yes.
writing in the New Testament.
He's a Gentile.
Yes.
We know that a number of ways. One is his name. That doesn't fit nicely into Jewish words. But Paul specifically lists the people he worked with. And he has a Jewish list, And he has another list, and Luke is on the other list. So you'd say, well, okay, it sure looks like he's a Gentile.
So to pick up on that, then, so Luke was a physician. He was referred to by Paul
As
later
the-
on in Acts as a physician, and he.
Whatever that meant back then.
Yeah, I'm not
Well,
sure.
It did carry some weight. A lot of physicians were actually slaves in households back then, but they were committed to knowledge and research and medicine, so they took that seriously. Luke wanted to be known as an accurate historian. An example is these first 4 verses that we're reading are all one continuous Greek sentence. And it's in
Yes.
classical Greek, as opposed to the rest of the gospel. And the understanding among those who know better than I is that he wanted to demonstrate to Theophilus and to the other readers of the gospel that he knew classical Greek. He had probably read Herodias and the early Greek historians. And then he downshifted into koinonia, the common everyday Greek language for the rest of the gospel. But when he said, referred to the orderliness, perhaps this is a guess, but Luke is much more concerned with chronology, getting chronology right, than the other gospels are. The other gospels,
You might call it, make sure the context is clear. This is what Jesus did and said, and maybe why he said it. Because if you've got the chronology right, you got the context right.
well, the typical Jewish person was not that concerned with the order in which things happened. If they wanted to bring in something that happened later, bring it up earlier in the story because it proved a point, they would do that.
Yeah,
But-
I've also heard that they would put the more important things first,
Yeah,
and fill in lesser and lesser and lesser things.
yeah,
But then you say, well, what led to what? Well, that wasn't relevant.
yeah.
I guess. But there's something else. The name Theophilus is more than likely a real person's name, but it does have a meaning. It translates as either, it depends on which side you want to make the subject and object, one who loves God, a God lover, or one I like, beloved of God, someone who is loved by God. So it is a Greek name. It is,
Was it a common Greek then?
I don't know about
Yes,
common.
it was a common Greek name.
And so the point is, notice he says, most excellent Theophilus.
Right.
That's a hint that he's not just dropping in a name that applies to all of us. We're all beloved of God, so this is a letter to everybody. No, probably this is a real person.
This is a person who demands
Respect, right. So Luke is giving that respect to a real person who happens to have a name that does apply, which is, I think, what's the reason I'm bringing it up. It's interesting because we are beloved of God. So this letter is written to us.
So this
2,000
is more
years later.
a primary source than maybe a secondary source of the gospel of Jesus.
Well, I think it depends on what you mean by primary source.
Yeah, I'm afraid that.
Peter obviously is a primary source
Yeah.
because he was with, he's
Then Paul
quoting,
would have been, right?
Paul would have been.
No,
But see,
no,
Luke,
not in the sense that Peter was, because
Oh, that's
Paul
true.
was never with Jesus
Right.
in
Paul
person.
claimed to be a subject of revelation. In other words, he doesn't ever explain exactly how this works, but Jesus appears to him and gives him the gospel.
Yeah.
So in that sense, he's a primary source. But he was not there watching the miracles and the teachings and all those things.
Okay.
Because remember, he was a persecutor before he became an apostle.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what Luke means by orderly account, that in his accompanying Paul, he didn't think it was orderly?
No, I don't think he's criticizing his friends who have written other things. For example, there were circulating
It wasn't an orderly account at that
circulating around at that time were sayings of Jesus. Picture a just notable and quotable kind of a listing of things he said. I don't know. I've never seen.
Like Confucius says.
I guess here are things that Jesus said. There was also a source called the miracles. So without context, you have his words and you have his miracles, but without the step-by-step process. Those were both available to Luke. Now that I would have thought would have violated his sense of order. I want to tell the story in a complete way, not just here's everything Jesus ever said.
As an example of his care in dating things, there's one in the days of Quirinius,
Yeah.
and such and such was the procurator of Judea,
Yeah, we're going to
and
see
Herod.
Right.
He gives 6 different time references to the same event,
that. Right.
just to
We're
nail it
used
down.
to dating. Today is July 19th,
Yeah.
2026. That was not the way they dated. They dated things in the reign of a king, and so Luke is being consistent with that during this reign of this emperor and this governor and this whatever else.
More so than the other gospels.
Yes. It's a time. I asked GPT, those kind of historical things are interesting. Are there any physical records? The Romans were good bookkeepers.
Yeah.
Do we have the books? And the answer was no, for the same reason that we've lost original Bible copies. They were just not written on materials that can stand up to 2,000 years. Plus, wars and natural disasters and those kind of things take their toll. But if you're writing on a kind of, quote, paper that's high in acid, and you're using an ink that's high in acid, the thing is going to turn to dust in several years. And that's what's happened. Even the Romans, who were careful about keeping track of all that stuff, it's all gone.
There was a great fire in Alexandria,
And that was a whole library.
and that was a whole library. And we probably lost a lot of history there.
And I don't know how that connects to this
That
exact
was in
story.
Egypt, wasn't it?
Yes, Alexander, Egypt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to say one more thing about this paragraph, Tim, before we leave it, and that's actually the last clause.
Well, there was a church in Alexandria.
Well, there's a Christian church in Egypt. It is actually the oldest Christian churches are the Coptic churches. I don't know how different the Coptic religion is to Western Christianity. I suspect we would recognize it, but it would probably be different enough that we would scratch our heads with it. Probably a little more mystical, I'm just guessing. Eastern churches are more mystical than Western churches. But look at the last clause. It's verse 4. So that you may know, he's writing this gospel to Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. The word certainty. Other words it could be here, assurance. Underline the word, even he uses the word know, that you may know. So this is not just, I don't think he's saying just so you get the dates right. I think that's important, and he thinks they're important. But I think it's really the message, the salvation message that's in this gospel is what he's talking about here. Theophilus, I want you to know that this story is about you, beloved of God. Okay, that's what this is all about. So that is a very packed first paragraph. Tim, did you have anything else in the history category that you wanted to bring forward?
No, but I think you made a good point there that this matter of reliability.
Yeah.
In fact, I read of one theory that this was written to Theophilus as a brief so that Theophilus could defend Paul against Nero in Rome.
Oh.
Okay.
I would say that's definitely speculation.
No question.
Paul, it is true that Luke was a companion of Paul, and there's no reason to think that would have ended somehow when Paul was in jail well, actually, technically, he was under house arrest in Rome, free to practice, free to preach, but technically under house arrest in Rome. That's how I understand it. So why not? Okay, we don't know who Theophilus was. Was he an attorney who was going to make the case? I don't know.
He was probably Roman and probably a high official. There's another reference to most exalted.
Yeah, Festus and Felix
Yeah.
are in the book of Acts. These are the, let's get the right title. You know that Pilate was the governor,
Procurator.
Procurator at the time of Jesus' trial.
Yes.
Okay, he's replaced with Felix and Festus later on, and it's Paul that are dealing. Paul have to deal with Felix and Festus, and there Luke again uses the most excellent Felix and the most excellent Festus. Now we know those were real people, but anyway. Go ahead, Tim. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Let's get to the story. It really picks up here, and this is an example of his dating the event. It's not extensive, but it's here. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife, Elizabeth, was also a descendant of Aaron. So that makes it two priestly families. Okay. Both of them were upright in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commandments and regulations blamelessly. We Lutherans might reply, prove it, but we, this was how they would describe it. Paul said the same thing. I was blameless. Now he would later say we're all sinners. So he doesn't reconcile those, but from the mindset, Jewish mindset, they kept the commandments. Later, Paul was saying, well, he didn't keep the spirit. But anyway, okay, but they had no children because Elizabeth was barren. I think it's quite interesting that the woman is always blamed. She's the one that's barren.
Yeah.
He's never described as infertile.
Yeah.
I just think that's interesting. And they were both well along in years. They were both past childbearing age. Once, when Zechariah's division was on duty and he was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood. Stop just a second. There were way too many priests for everybody to get the opportunity to burn incense in the temple. Something on the order of 24,000 people qualified.
Well, it had been 1,500 years since Aaron,
Yeah,
Moses' brother.
So
So a lot of generations in there.
So it is likely that most priests never had the opportunity. And they used a lot system,
So the priests aren't like ordained, they just happen to be in the priestly family and so.
well, he described it this way, remember, here's his qualifications. There they are.
Yeah.
Now I can't see it. The priestly division of Abijah. So that's a division of the Levites. So he was qualified to burn the incense.
If,
What does that mean? There were division of Abijah.
Well, it's just a family. He mentioned the family tree. So Aaron was the first priest under Moses.
Right.
And he had sons, and they had sons, and they had sons, and they had, and so I don't know where Abijah fits into that. But just picture a family tree.
for instance, they did not have a tribe like the rest of them. The Levites were separate. They didn't have, they weren't one of the 12 tribes.
Well, they were one of the 12. They didn't get land.
Land,
Oh,
that's
right,
that's
right.
right. Look, yeah, that's right.
They got, but what they got was service in the temple.
Yeah.
And that was a money maker.
Yeah.
So they gave up the land, but they got the money making process. Okay. Anyway, where was I? I wanted to say about the lots. You're familiar with how the Amish choose their bishops.
Yeah.
That is in essence a lot.
Yeah.
A piece of paper is put into the Bible, one Bible, and there are 5 Bibles up on the table. 5 eligible men are asked, please choose a Bible. And that's how they choose their bishop. It's a long system. Now, in the Bible, there's one more place where making a decision by lot, this is New Testament, is explored. And that is, remember in the book of Acts, when the apostles decide they want to replace Judas. Judas has committed suicide.
Yeah.
And so they bring forward
Barnabas?
Tobias and, well, almost, it's Barsabbas. Joseph Barsabbas is the second character. And they use lots to determine that Matthias is the new apostle. That is the last time that lots are used in the New Testament. After that, they make their decisions using prayer, consultation among the brothers, but they don't roll the dice. By the way, it's never considered to be luck, like rolling dice. It is allowing God to make the choice. It's a religious thing. I'm not saying that it's 50-50 chance. I'm saying that God will choose. If I make it possible, God will choose. So that's lots. So that's how he gets the job. He was chosen by lot. And as I said, there will be people standing there that may never get to serve in the temple like this. By the way, this is not the same thing as going into the Holy of Holies. That's the chief priest does that once a year. This is going into the space outside the Holy of Holies. There's a little altar there, and they burn incense on that altar. So it's not the Holy of Holies. They adjacent is considered a tremendous honor, very important. The incense is the prayers of the people ascending to God, but it's not the holy things. Anyway, okay. So he's there at this altar, either preparing or burning the incense. And suddenly, standing at the right side of the I gotta get my words right. Then an angel of the Lord appeared, standing right next to the incense altar. And as we've discussed before, angels are not little cherubs with cute little wings, chubby faces.
Like
I don't know what one. I've never had the pleasure of this, but because of the reaction of people, the first words out of an angel's mouth has to be,
do not be
"Don't be
afraid.
afraid."
Yeah.
So I'm imagining more like Michael the archangel. This is not Michael, but
Something like that.
some sort of a powerful image that scares the life out of you. Anyway, do not be afraid. Your prayers have been heard. Now, he's there offering incense. You might think it's the prayers that he's giving in that process. He's probably been trained to offer prayers while he's doing the incense job. But that's not the prayer the angel's talking about. The angel's talking about the problem that he and Elizabeth have had for their whole married life. We don't have any kids. What's wrong with us? In Jewish culture, if you didn't have children, your family is cut off. Your line stops. It's a terrible thing. And so they would have prayed about it. Now, they're getting sort of old, I would imagine you probably stopped praying about it. It makes sense. It's too late now, God. Never had children. Anyway. Will bear you a son, and you are to give him the name of John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. What Luke is doing is setting up why Mark, remember Mark, doesn't have a birth story. He starts his gospel. He says, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, he's got John baptizing in the river. That's the beginning of Mark's gospel. So you might ask, who is John? So this is a good, I think this is a good historian's connection.
Yeah.
This is John. We're being
Such a
introduced to
good
John.
foundation.
We're being introduced to John the Baptist. Many of the people of Israel will bring back to the Lord their God. John will say, I'm the one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. That's all going to be consistent. Turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous. Make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand, or something like that. This is basic teaching. And he baptized people who had repented of their sin. Now, it's very hidden, almost too hidden. But Zechariah looks at the angel and says, how can I be sure of this? You may think that's a perfectly reasonable question.
Yeah.
It sure sounded to me.
Yeah.
I'm an old man. My wife is well along in years. Now, you can tell there's something else going on here by how Gabriel responds. This is not a neutral question. Gabriel is so offended by this because he says, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. When God speaks, it is. Nobody dares ask a question. How is this going to happen?
He slammed him down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He is, picture Gabriel. He's
Well, he's got an attitude.
yeah, and I've joked before. My favorite angel is Rona Downey. She said something like that in Touch My Angel. She said her line was, "I don't see how anybody who has stood in the presence of God can say no to God."
Yeah.
From her perspective, that answers.
That's the bottom line.
That's not a biblical statement.
Yeah.
It's just I like that thought.
Yeah.
And Gabriel's saying the same thing. If you stand in the presence of God, you don't say to God, how?
Yeah.
You just say yes.
There's a contrast coming up
Oh, I know, and we're going to get there.
with a person that doesn't have an attitude
Yes, exactly.
and got a completely different result.
Pointing out in just a few minutes here, we're going to have Mary say almost the same thing, and you say, how do we parse this? But in the case of Zechariah, God is saying, you have made a fundamental error. And so, honestly, one way to translate the question, he asks, how can I be sure of this? That's what's printed there. But he could have been saying something along the lines of, show me a sign that this is going to happen. That was a common Jewish answer. Show me a sign. And so Gabriel could then also be saying, you want a sign? I'm going to give you a sign. You can't speak until this child is born.
My sympathies are with Zechariah. It's been years since they've even talked about having children.
Yeah.
And suddenly this angel appears and brings and says, you're going to have a child. It says, where did this come from? I'm here to offer prayers for the people, not myself.
Yeah.
I do admit, I have the same thought. Zechariah, but I'm judging by Gabriel's response and the penalty.
Yeah.
We can say, when we're believers, we can say, God knows the heart. And so what God is seeing in this question is a level of disbelief that we don't see in the Mary story. We're going to see Mary asked almost the same, not exactly, but
Yeah.
almost the
She
same.
was pretty close.
Yeah.
And she gets treated differently. So
Yeah.
that's just for us.
But you'd have to say, Doug, the penalty wasn't all that harsh. I mean, they went on to have John, and his speech was restored almost immediately. So it was kind of I'll show you what you get when you say no to God.
And I said, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. I love that. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at the proper time.
I've always wondered, why that punishment? Why going mute so that he can't spread any more bad attitude? Or?
Why mute?
Yeah, why mute?
That's an interesting one.
I honestly, I've always thought that was funny.
Well, it's hard to be a priest if you can't talk.
Well, but see, priests did more than, you're thinking of a priest as a preacher.
Yes, I was.
Teacher.
Yeah.
That is not as important. See, they had prophets in their thing. They had priests and prophets. A priest did acts. They did the sacrifices.
So they weren't reading the Torah and all that stuff.
Well, they may have read them as part of their job also, but my thinking is it wasn't an oral kind of job like we think of as our pastor.
Our pastor today, that would be a big problem.
Yeah.
So now the people
That's what transcripts are for.
In 15, I hadn't realized that John wasn't supposed to drink wine or fermented
That's called an ascetic. Um, there were sects in Judaism who were ascetic, A-S-C-E-T.
Yeah. It's ascetic Jews.
Yeah. I don't know.
Does that mean teetotaler or what is it?
It said all. No fermented drink, wine or fermented. Doesn't say distilled. So
So the scotch was still on the table.
Well, isn't distilled though distilling a fermented drink?
Yeah, it is.
You
technically,
actually,
right? Hops.
you're correct.
Well, it says or strong
You need
drink.
the mash. You need the mash that already has the alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And then you get that.
Which
to
is
the
the
right.
fermentation process.
That's right. You get that to the right temperature, then the alcohol becomes alcohol.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
My translation,
You get your whiskey in there, in other words.
Okay.
well, my translation says not, will not drink, must not drink wine or strong drink.
That's how I remember.
Yeah,
This is
Whiskey
NIV.
strong.
gotcha either way.
Many of the people of Israel will bring back to the Lord their God, and he will go before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah. At one point, Jesus' disciples say, "Isn't Elijah supposed to come first before the Son of Man?" And Jesus said, he says basically, yes, and he did. And oh, you're thinking John that. So John specifically denied that he was Elijah. They asked him, and he denied it. I think he's saying, my name isn't Elijah, it's John. But he's performing the function of Elijah. To make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Let's get back on it. Meanwhile, the people were waiting outside, wondering why he stayed so long. He realized that he had seen a vision. When he finally comes out, I guess he's a little shocked. He's not able to speak. He's probably making signs like can't speak.
Yeah.
It's obvious. What Luke says is it was obvious to them he had seen a vision. They have no idea what it is because he hasn't told them yet. But now I like a little detail. In the next paragraph, you would think in our culture today he would be designated as disabled and allowed to go home. It says in verse 23, when his time of service was completed, he returned home. So even though he had seen this amazing thing, had lost his voice, he probably thought, well, I'm here till next Thursday or whatever the date was. And so he just continued to work. Well, it looks like that's what he did. After this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant. Another detail. Elizabeth went along with this plan. And she said to him, it's probably been years since they've been trying for a child.
Yeah.
And suddenly Zechariah comes home and says, well, we're having a child.
Imagine that conversation.
Elizabeth says, oh yeah? But she had to participate in this to have a baby. And so now the story picks up.
So maybe he was not mute at that point.
Or he could write it on a tablet.
Yeah. What do you write on the tablet?
Okay, she became pregnant. Now, she's in seclusion, I assume now is normal for women. At that time, I know a pregnant woman was considered unclean. So some sort of seclusion is probably normal.
Probably to protect the mom.
Pardon?
To protect her.
No, I think it's to protect the kid. She's considered unclean.
Oh.
So if she were to touch you, you can't go to temple. You can't take food out of her hand. She can't prepare your dinner. So I don't know all of this, but she's considered unclean the reason Luke is giving us that little detail is because he wants to position it in the Mary story. Because he's going to tell you that next. He's going to tell you the Mary story. So we've got 5 months passing in the story, and then he shifts to Mary. So where are we? In the 6th month, God sent an angel, Gabriel, to Nazareth. So we've got St. Gabriel, a town of Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph. You know this. They are not married, they are pledged to be married. There were kind of 3 levels of engagement. And so you moved up the levels until you were married. The first level you could undo. But the second and third, you cannot undo. You have to divorce. And so even though you have formally said the I do's at the ultimate wedding ceremony, if you had gotten to the second level, we would call it engagement. Then you have to have a divorce. You can't just say, "Oh, I gave up. She gave me my ring back." That's not the way it works. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." We're used to those words, but again, this is a scary character that is curing marriage. Mary is probably mid-teens at this point, so she's what we would consider a teenage girl. And suddenly she's faced with this Gabriel angel character. Fear would be likely. And he says, "You are highly favored." Now, notice at the moment, he hasn't told her anything about pregnancy.
Yeah.
He just says, comes in the room, boom, you are highly favored. And Luke tells us Mary was greatly troubled. Now, I think she has good reason to be troubled in a few minutes when he lays out the pregnancy plan. That's weird. But at the moment, it's just, all he said is, you are favored. The Lord is with you. So what is troubling marriage? I think, how about this? She's just going to say what you and I would say. Who am I? I don't understand. I'm just a kid living in Nazareth. What can I possibly do for you, the angel, or you, God? This is out of my wheelhouse. God does not appear to teenage girls in Nazareth. Kind of summarize. The angel said to her, repeats, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor." And here it is. "You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name of Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. The kingdom will never end." Now, Mary may not have understood all of those sentences, but if we look carefully at those sentences, we see that Jesus is being described as the Son of God and as the Messiah and the eternal King of Kings. So there's a lot in that description. Mary may have been oblivious to that kind of language. Who knows what she knew as a teenager. And then we get to the question, as we said, it sounds a lot like Zechariah. How will this be? Let's go back. Mary says, "How will this be?" Oh, she adds, "Since I am a virgin." Okay. Now, going back up to Zechariah, How can I be sure of this? Is the line in verse 18. How can I be sure of this? Is Zechariah. How?
They're a little bit different, the questions.
Well, how will this be?
What, but does your translation go on to say, since I am a virgin?
Oh, yes, it's there. It says I'm, yeah,
So she wants to know, what's the process?
yes.
She's accepted the process. What is it?
I think that's the difference.
Yeah,
She's saying,
makes
I
sense.
understand how biology works.
Yeah,
So you're saying I'm going to have a baby.
so how can this be?
So how is this going to work? Not saying you can't do it.
Do it, yeah.
But, for example, the answer could have been, you and Joseph are going to have sex, and the result's going to be a
You're
baby.
gonna have a baby.
That's not the story, but that, you know,
Yeah.
she would have accepted whatever came out of the angel's mouth.
Yeah.
Anyway, but what I said before, I said this was fine. God knows the heart. And so Mary is thinking like a believer. God has told her what's going to happen, and she's trying to work out how she will be involved in that, and she's willing. Zechariah's question was more an
He doubted
unbelief question.
That God could do that.
Yeah, you can't do this. You're not able to do this, God, or something like that. Anyway, we get the difference.
How much religious education would a teenage girl have?
Probably hardly any.
I would say zero.
Yeah.
Really?
She would have attended synagogue on Saturdays. To my knowledge, they had no education
For reading and writing.
for reading and writing. Even boys didn't have as much writing as they had reading. I don't know if it was common for boys to be able to write. They were trained to read scripture.
You called her a believer.
I'm interpreting why her answer, her question is received charitably by Gabriel, and Zechariah isn't. Doesn't say because Mary.
And he would have had a lot of training.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He was pretty skilled.
At any rate, she is a quick learner. Because when we come to her song,
Oh, yes.
she demonstrates an understanding of what's going on.
Well, and we say when somebody has the spirit, then the training isn't relevant. Because if somebody has the spirit, it doesn't matter whether you went to Hebrew school, or whatever they call it. I doubt they call it Hebrew school. Anyway, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. And then a little connection. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Okay? Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. And she, who was said to be barren, is in her 6th month. So there's our connection again with the timing. John is 6 months ahead of Jesus. If you assume that this is what's called the Annunciation. The Annunciation is the moment that Mary gets pregnant. We don't know that exactly. It doesn't tell us. But approximately 6 months, John is ahead of Jesus.
Yeah.
And here is Mary's more formal answer. I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. And then the angel left.
Yeah.
May it be to me as you have said. So be it is another way perhaps to translate that. Another way simply is amen. That's a good way to describe it. Amen. Thoughts? Now we're going to move in into more Christmas stories in the next class. So we'll have more opportunity.
It'll probably be really hot out next week, so that'll cool us down.
Christmas in July, you were mentioning. Yeah, you
Christmas in July.
This morning in our working fellowship. I played my music on the system. She said, that's a Christmas song. Yes. Anything else for the good of the cause? Now, I bet you, I'm gonna go up here.
We gotta find the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah, it always happens.
It's elusive.
It's okay. I'm gonna do it. Change. One problem is keeping. Here we go. Moment, please. There it is. Change the share. I don't really need to do all this, but I'm thinking of the quality of the recording. This way the prayer is on the recording. Let us pray.
Our Father,
Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
so that's the beginning of the gospel of Luke. So I'm going to close.